My next guest is an associate professor at USQ and the co-author of a new book called When Winning Matters. He co-authored the book with NBL legend coach, I would like to say, Rob Beveridge. And the next guest is Stephen P. Bird, and they more affectionately known in the sporting arena as Birdie. So I'll bring you in. G'day. How you going, Stephen?
Craig, how you going? Welcome to the listeners. Look forward to talking shop with you tonight, mate.
No worries, mate. Appreciate you giving up your Sunday night and busy schedule, and hopefully the wrist isn't too sore from you and Bevo signing all those books, mate.
Yeah, look, a quick shout out to our marketing maestro, Jono, who slipped that in the early pre-sales about everyone that ordered. They would get a personally autographed book. And funny enough, Bevo and I have just run with that, and we've actually signed every single book and putting in little notes personally to every person, and we'll continue to do that. As you're aware, we've sold out with the first shipment. We've had to order shipment number 2. So hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have the next lot of books arriving to send out to all the coaches, parents, and athletes.
That's awesome. And it's really good to see that you are connecting with people on that, the what's the word I'm looking for, on the individual level, that you are taking time to do that. Because I know I interviewed Alan Stein Jr., who authored his book Raise Your Game. I mean, I think he's on his second book now as well, and He signs his personally for those who order through his website, and not through Amazon, the ones that he actually sends out. So you guys have done pretty well, because I've seen splashed all over social media people holding up their books and thanking you. So it's obviously resonating. But what I'd like to ask first is, when you guys decided to write this book, there's a lot of books in the winning type space. How did you make your book different? I know there's 10 chapters in the book, but what were the things you wanted to do differently?
So first and foremost, it's not about training. It's not about one particular sport, although obviously we both have a little bit of a bias towards basketball. It's really, Bevo and I have looked at the professional high performance environments that we've been in, and what we've had to do in relation to try and create success, or more aptly, when winning matters to those particular environments. And it's a little bit of a word play, Craig, really. It's, as you get through the chapters in the book, the readers will soon find out it's actually not about winning. It's the processes that we go through to put ourselves in the position at an individual level and then a team level, whether that be sport, school, corporate, where we can place ourselves in the position just to be the best version of ourselves. And if we can do that, we're all winning. And ultimately, we look at the 10 chapters where we've gone into different environments, from NBL teams to WNBL teams to Commonwealth Games teams to Olympic Games teams to NRL teams, where we've been in these environments. And what were the small wins we were trying to gain? But the reoccurring theme across all of the chapters is, it's how can we collectively as a group go on the same journey together to optimize the person becoming the best version of themselves, both from a basketball perspective, obviously on and off the court, or on and off the field. So our book is different in that regard, that it's not about training or getting better physically. It's really about how can you become the best version of yourself. And obviously we make a lot of reference in there around some really wise words from the late great Kobe Bryant in particular. He's referenced heavily throughout the book.
So that's really good. I was keen to know, because obviously there's a broad space in the sporting spectrum, how you guys have approached it. I don't have or haven't bought the copy of the book yet. I'm not a book reader, interestingly enough. I never get through them. I start them, I read them, and I don't comprehend them. Like, I'll read them and then I just don't retain anything, interestingly. So I find that, for me, is that if you're wondering why my name hasn't come in on the order yet. So
good one out to you anyway. It's all good.
Look, I've been in your group and I've watched some of your videos, and I find what you've had to say extremely valuable. And I'm sure you're trying to reach a target with that group. Have you reached your 3,000 members?
So when we started with the Facebook group for When Winning Matters, our initial target was, Coach Project 3K. That was where we started. Within 14 days, we had over 2,000 people in the community for When Winning Matters, which is great. At the moment, I think the last time Bevo checked, we're around 2,700. So we're getting close to that target. And all of those people that are in the group, as soon as we hit that 3,000 mark in our community, there is some bonus content material that we had to pull out of the book just because of word limit size that we've got sitting in the background, and we're gonna share that with the community as soon as we hit the Coach Project 3K. So looking forward to getting those 3,000 members in the community so we can get some of that material out to everybody.
So how can people join the group to help you reach the Coach 3000K? So
Yeah.
I didn't put the banner up, but you can have a quick chat and I'll throw it up as you say it. So
yes, certainly, no trouble. Yeah, so we're just obviously on Facebook. So if you just search When Winning Matters Lessons Learned from Sports Elite, you'll find that Facebook group. And obviously you need to apply to become a member to get into that group, and you'll see a whole series of webinars and lives that we've been able to complete, looking at unpacking each chapter within the book, starting at chapter 1, know your game plan, working all your way through to chapter 10, which is your championship winning blueprint. So there's a whole series of free downloadables in there to help you, as we said, become the best version of yourself, both in sport and in your life as a whole. But the thing we've received the most feedback on so far to date has been just the usability of some of the information. Between Bevo and myself, we have over 30 years of elite international experience and professional experience in sport. So we've taken the things that have worked really well across a multitude of teams and organizations, and we've tried to put that in very simple checklist format. And the whole idea is you can, once you purchase the book and you get into our MVP room on the website that hosts the book, you can download all this content. And we've challenged our coaches, download the material. We want you to print it off and put it on your fridge, put it in your locker room, put it up in the gym. And they're just little positive reinforcement of some situational reframing techniques to help you really look at being positive in the actions that you take.
Yeah. So I have a question around people. Interestingly, when you were talking about the perspective. How important do you think addressing the WIFM for athletes is as a coach, where the athletes are there because there's something in it for them. So they have what we say is the WIFM, what's in it for me. Coaches ultimately deal with people. And one of the things in my coaching journey that I never quite got until late is that you're actually coaching people, not X's and O's. And how does your book address the importance of understanding the individuals that you coach, whether it be an individual endeavor or a team environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's a couple of chapters in there. One particular chapter 2, which is about culture counts. And in that particular chapter, we go through looking at even simple things such as personality traits. And we've used in the past a DOPE analysis where we're looking at categorizing. It's an acronym for doves, owls, peacocks, and eagles, and using that visualization of those birds, you can certainly start to think of who do you know would fall under a dove category, or who do you know that would fall under an eagle category. And obviously they all have different ways of obtaining information and absorbing information. So looking at how we can best communicate to get the message across to those individuals is one way. Another chapter we talk about is a chapter in chapter 8 where we talk about Ferraris, Jaguars, and Bentleys. And for us, it's when we're dealing with a team, it's really about athlete clustering. So, for example, I might have my young bucks or my development players, they're going to be my Ferraris. So I'm going to train them slightly differently than I would, my seasoned players, my 5 to 7 year players who have been in the league for some time. And yet I'll train those guys differently to how I would with my, 10 plus year vets. So how I would train particular players, and obviously Andrew Bogut and David Anderson wrote the forwards for the book. So how we would look at training those guys that we would categorize as Bentleys would be different in our strength and conditioning and their recovery strategies they may use compared to how we would train, say, a young Ferrari in his first year in the league. So once again, it's really the individualization to knowing your group and looking at what can they do personally, what do they want to achieve with their professional development in their professional pathway transition.
My previous guest, you may have mentioned, may have heard mention the goal setting approach and the meditation side of things that she took to her business. And one thing when I was speaking with Alan Stein Jr., I said that business and sport are very similar in that they're both like games, like literally games. That business is a sport is probably the way I presented it at the time. So she talks about goal setting and the importance of setting, small goals and achievable goals. So how does your book actually address the concept of goals and also time management? Something I noticed with my athletes is they're not very good at managing their time. So does the book look to address those topics?
Yeah, it certainly does. Chapter 7, we talk about the 1%ers that count. And ironically, I just want to pause for a moment and give a shout out to Dr. Joe Lucan. In particular, I spoke to Joe and have worked with Joe at my time at the Townsville Fire in the WNBL. And Joe was actually the person that I spoke to first when I was thinking of putting the concept of the book together before Bevo and I then went on the journey of writing the actual book. And I know in my dealings with Joe at the Townsville Fire, and I've been an admirer of her work for quite some time, when you look at those areas around what we included in asking athletes, and a lot of the material in our book it's not according to the world of Bevo and the Bird. This is what the athletes have told us they feel work best for them. And when we look at the 1%ers that count, we identify 7 key 1%ers that the athletes tell us they think make a defining difference to them for their performance to become the best version of themselves. So I said there were 7 of those particular 1%ers that count. The top 5 1%ers in that group are all psychological strategies. And some of those are around mindfulness, areas such as goal setting, determining your future self, obtaining your highest self. Now, if we look at those, the one that is the very beginning, so the number 1% that counts that we deal with in the book is actually goal setting. And we have a whole series of steps in there, 4 key steps for the readers to follow in order to maximize their opportunity to be successful in their pursuit of their goals. And I think a lot of the work that Dr. Lucan has spoken about previously around just situational reframing. And even if you look at, some of the greats, so particularly, Michael Jordan, and, I've taken over 9,000 shots, I've missed over 9,000 shots, all of this sort of stuff. But it's not deemed to be that he hasn't failed. He's being positive in his approach to learn from experiences. So when he is placed in those positions, he is in the best position to be successful in whatever that may be. And I know Dr. Joe often talks about the then and when approach, So when I look at, what is it I need to do? Okay, so hopping in the car, I put my seatbelt on, I hop in the car, then I put my seatbelt on. So it's like every morning we need to make what we do, these habitual small changes to ensure that we place ourselves in the best position to be successful. But when you look at things around goal setting, that's the number 1 place to start.
Yeah, so I actually interviewed Dr. Jo Lukens when she released her book, and that if, when, then strategy I've actually applied to my diet. So
excellent.
So for those that want to check out that interview, it's up on People with a Passion, and she is an amazing sports psychologist and has helped with the Cowboys in the NRL, yes, as well as the women's NBL, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your journey in sports science, actually, because you're a late start. You're late to the party when it comes to getting a degree, and I think from memory, Jo was similar in that she started a journey and then ended up where she ended up.
Somewhere else, correct.
Because my core thing I do is talk to people about their passion. Do you want to talk about what actually got you into the physiology and the sports science space?
Absolutely. I just want to acknowledge, obviously my dad. Ken Bird. So my father gave me some advice early on in the piece, and he said, find your passion, make it your profession, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that resonated with me at a young age. Like, I was heavily into sport as a youth, up to sort of 16, 17, 18, 19 years of age, playing rugby league. And then when I left year 10, actually just prior to finishing year 10, at the age of 16, I was doing work experience at that time in a gym. Back in the day when gyms were owned by bodybuilders, martial artists, they were owned. It wasn't the health and fitness revolution that you see today. This is going back in the mid 1980s. And after doing the 2 weeks work experience at school and the gym owner offered me a job. He said, would you like, to work here full time? So as any 16-year-old, I run home to my mum and said, I've just been offered a job at the gym. And my mother had said, okay, we need to work out whether you're going to go on and stay at school. And the only reason I could offer my mother to stay at school was the fact that I'd be the youngest open boys captain for the boys football team at Bathurst High School. So mum said that wasn't a good enough reason. So I left there and then and started working at the gym, and starting as a 16-year-old doing everything, teaching group fitness classes, cleaning mirrors, cleaning toilets, doing the vacuuming, teaching martial arts. That was a part of what I had to learn when I started at that gym. And during that time, over the next 14, 15 years, working in the fitness industry, I was training a lot of athletes, and I often would apply for jobs, Australian Institute of Sport, NSWIS, ACT Academy of Sport, all of these jobs in rugby league or high performance sport. And I'd always receive the lovely, we regret to inform you letter, because I didn't have a degree. And that all came to a head in 1998 for the Commonwealth Games, where I was working with a couple of boxers, amateur boxers who were in the Australian team. And it was one of the first times Boxing Australia were taking a trainer / strength and conditioning guy to the Common Games. And so I applied for that role, having worked with 4 of the current squad, thinking I was in a good shot to get the position, and once again received the "we regret to inform you" letter, as I didn't have a degree. So that was the aha moment for myself. And I was like, if I want to follow this, my passion, and make it my profession, I need to go to university to get a degree. So I was 28 years of age when I entered university, and I left school at 16. And I had not been in that environment. I spoke to Professor Frank Marino, and Professor Marino went on to actually be the supervisor of my PhD, and they offered me a spot as an associate student at T.R.U.S.T University, where I could pay up front in full, attend classes. I wasn't necessarily enrolled as a student, but if I could show aptitude, then I'd be offered a place as a student in the second semester, which I did. Thoroughly enjoyed what I was doing. I enrolled in a PDHPE, a teaching degree. However, the more teaching-related subjects that I completed and the more exercise and sports science subjects I completed, the more I found that I really had a passion for the sport and exercise science. So I ended up doing a double major. I was fortunate enough to be able to do a double major, receive a scholarship to do an honours research degree, and then receive an Australian Postgraduate Award to complete my PhD. So my pathway to obtaining my PhD is certainly, my academic career, it has not taken the normal path that you would speak and find from most other academics. And having that piece of paper has made such a difference to providing opportunities, 2 Olympic Games, 9 World Championships, 8 World Cups, 1 Commonwealth Games. Those opportunities are all linked to, being able to, fortunate enough to attend university and graduate, and then try and align that with the significant practical experience that I had already obtained in that previous sort of 16 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to bring that up because, and I think it's great what your father said to you around passion. Not everyone gets to make a job from their passion. And I get asked, a lot of people don't have purpose, and because I've chosen passion as a topic to talk about, I find it intriguing because I've always chosen to do things that I absolutely love. And it's always a choice. And to me, it's for the exact reason that you said, is if you're enjoying what you do, it's not work. And
absolutely
everything I do for me is just is actually fun. So like whether I'm doing, like I do all sorts of things, like obviously this, graphic design. I've worked probably 8 or 10 years in the graphic design industry as a pre-press operator. So I love that creative side. Did radio, journalism, all that sort of stuff, and obviously basketball, which is I've been married to it for over 30 years. I absolutely love the sport. Thus, our connection tonight. So I love the narrative, and I do appreciate you answering that question, but also for those listening who are contemplating a degree later in life, because it is a challenge, but it's equally as rewarding to set that goal and achieve it. And you just indicated how much your life actually changed by making that choice. And that's what happens, is life changes when you make a choice. I've got a couple of shout outs here. So I'll go to this one because you're going to recognize this one. So,
yeah, there's my the first half of Bevo on the Bird right there.
So I'm sure people can see that one, but it says Birdie is one of the most passionate people I've ever worked with. His enthusiasm is infectious and has inspired me and many others. So a nice compliment there from, I say, an NBL legend himself, but let's get him back in the NBL as a head coach, get some more NBL teams in to help him develop the league too. So Rob Beveridge, your co-author of When Winning Matters, who I believe had a podcast too tonight. So I don't know if he's waiting or he's finished, but I will get Bevo back on at some point to talk about what he's up to too, no doubt. So shout out to Rob Beveridge, and hope he's well, and hope his podcast went well tonight. Otherwise, he may well have joined us. So I have a question here too. So I'll bring this one up, and I hope that, I'm sorry if we made you wait for the response to this question, but we've got Brett Davis is asking, in sport or business, would you try to change a mindset of a person or find a way to work with a mindset to suit the culture of an organization? I think that's a pretty good question. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, look, I think it really depends on, does the culture fit your set of values and ethics first and foremost? And if you've got those two things aligned, then definitely it's around, any resistance is usually due to a lack of knowledge. And we talk about fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets. And when we talk in the business or sports scenario, and speaking specifically from a sports perspective, where we've had initially athletes unsure of why they're doing what they're doing. So if you really look at, know your role, do your job, that scenario, and they understand the meaning of why they're doing what they're doing and how that attaches them, because we need to attach this person to what they're trying to achieve individually and as a group. And I think if you can make that connection, then you're setting that person up to be in a position where they think that their contribution, and they feel their contribution, is going to be most valued. So if I was in that position, I'd be looking at those couple of steps. Great question.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome question as well. And you just added some more things I now want to ask too. So thanks, Brett, for that. Because you just mentioned, the concepts of values. I want to talk a little bit about, within organizations, values, principles. And another thing that I've identified myself is expectations, that a lot of people's disappointment in an outcome is often attached to the expectation they had going in. So do you want to touch on, within an organization or any sort of team structure, how you manage values, principles, expectations?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. And I'm going to refer everybody, and if they don't know this person, I'm going to challenge everybody tonight to look them up. The guy's name's Inky Johnson, I-N-K-Y Johnson. Look him up. Inky's whole philosophy is around, now if you go and look him up, you'll see he was a superstar stud college gridiron player who had some significant adversity affect him. And I'll leave you to go and look him up and follow his story. However, what Inky talks about a lot is it's about the process, not the product. And I think when you look at culture and values and principles, you really need to define for yourself, what is the process that you want, and how is that does that process meet your values and your ethical approach to moving forward to be the best version of yourself. And I know in the organizations I've worked in, the most successful organizations they have a high degree of clarity around the organizational structure when it comes to their core values. So I think that would be the key for me, that all the organizational staff across all levels of the organization know their job, know their role, and they have a very clear understanding of the core values, which obviously then links to the mission of the organization. If you can do that and allow the staff to feel engaged in that process, and most importantly, that their contribution to achieving and meeting those core values is such an important part of that process, you're going to have employees that are going to be lifelong employees.
That's really good advice. It's brought to mind a video I recently stumbled across of Gary Vaynerchuk's, who actually talks about in his workplace that he puts more value and emphasis on his employees than he does the customer. He says if you look after your employees, then the end user actually reaps the benefits and the rewards of you looking after your own people. So I guess from a sporting context, that makes sense too, that if the morale's high in a team and they've all bought into the environment, that's going to result hopefully and translate into wins, which translates into spectators supporting the team because everyone likes a winner. So
look, I'm just gonna piggyback onto that. When you talk about and look, you and I could talk basketball all night long, and obviously the NBA finals are on at the moment. But my question to you, Craig, is it about winning a championship, or is it the process of winning a championship? And I think that's where the more successful teams invest heavily in the process of winning a championship, and it's the product, the outcome, is the outcome, and that's directly related to the process that we put in place. And I know, just thinking off the top of my head, over recent years in the NBA, was it about the championship, and was that the meaningful part, or is it the process of the teams putting in to win the championship?
Well, you've got situations that you had with the Golden State Warriors a couple of years ago where Iguodala and guys like that took pay cuts, and I think with the Spurs the same, guys took pay cuts as part of the process. There was no guarantee they would win a championship, but they bought into the fact that they wanted the right people to get that job done. So they could have just said, "Oh, my pay packet."
Yeah, and we just mentioned, if you engage your staff, the employees, so the players, into that process, like they will, as I said, they'll be lifelong employees. They all want to give their all for you day in and day out. And obviously I've seen with the teams and being involved with Bevo for some time now, nearly 10 years, and seeing how he approaches an athlete-centered, administrative supported, process for him around what is it that he can do to ensure the athletes are being fully developed on and off the court, and engaging them in that process throughout. And, you can see the teams that are successful do that really, really well. And we're not just talking about on and off court, but we're talking about helping them set up with houses, helping them looking at engaging community, education, obviously everything around their professional development, whether that be through skills, through technical, through tactical, through recovery, through nutrition, through psychology. All of those areas all have an impact on allowing that person to become the best version of themselves.
It's the approach that I myself have had with my athletes. Is I made my program athlete centric and realized that if I look after the athlete, everybody wins, and that's what I call my everybody wins strategy. So I think looking at the individual and making them happy then makes their parents happy, and if they're successful and they're improving, then that makes their schools, their clubs, their associations, Basketball Queensland, where I am, and then Basketball Australia, hopefully happy because you've done your job and the athlete is ultimately the focus. So that whole thing around that athlete-centric or employee-centric approach is and should be part of the process, because I think a lot of organizations see themselves in a hierarchical structure where it's almost authoritative, that they set out like, this is where we think our values lie as an organization, and the last thing they look at is their people, and you almost need to flip that on its head. and say, well, let's focus on our people and develop them into an environment where they're getting benefit, we're helping them, which then creates the culture around, what is a winning culture then, and also that's a part of the process. So it all absolutely ties in. So look, I'm going to put up your website. So I want you to talk a little bit about SPB International, and if anyone's got any other questions, there is a question there you may choose to answer there. I threw it up a little while again from Brett, so thanks, Brett, for being so engaging. If anyone else has any questions,
throw them up. Absolutely.
Then please take the time to engage now, because we will be winding this up in a few minutes. So what I'll do is just respond to that question there on the screen. What are your key pillars to developing a culture within an organization? And then I'll ask you to start to speak about SPB International.
Sure thing. Hey, Brett, thank you for that question. That's a great question. And I'm going to sum that up for you, really. And as I said, that chapter 2, Culture Counts of When Winning Matters, the book, we talk about a process there just built on the TRUST acronym. And we feel that when you look at, the pillars are involved, the central connecting theme across any culture is that of trust. And we've all been in situations where where there's been a high level of trust in an organization and how that has worked, or you've seen situations where there's been a low level of trust and what the outcomes of that has been. But really, if you look at the acronym, so total commitment, so for the T, the R being looking at respect specifically, if you look at the U, unselfishness, the S for sacrifice, and then the T, ultimately the trust that lines all that together. So as opposed to specific pillars, we would look at framing everything around the TRUST acronym itself, and that would be a cornerstone for our process to have our employees engaging in trying to become the best version of themselves. So it's a great question, Brett. Really, really appreciate it.
So if you just want to address a little bit about SPB International, also tell people where they can get a copy of the book When Winning Matters, and give us the full title of the book. And what we'll do is, if anyone else has any questions, we will go to those. And if not, then we'll start to wrap things up. But I do appreciate the earlier guests, and I do appreciate anyone that's tuning in right now to this episode of People with a Passion's Be My Guest. And I've got a comment there, so I'll throw that one up and I'll put it back to you, Bertie, or Bert. I say Bertie, but Bert the Bird, and just talk about your website there.
Sure thing. So I guess, with SPB International, we've been able to be in a position where we've worked for extensive time throughout the Southeast Asia area. I've been involved with the Indonesian sporting organisations for quite some time now, going on 10 years. So with the Ministry of Sport, the sports federations, and the Indonesian Olympic Committee, and been fortunate enough to head up 2 Olympic cycles, one cycle in 2008 for the Beijing Olympics, and then most recently in 2016. You talk about the book, there it is, it pops up there. So if people want to purchase, they can just click on the Find Out More tab, and that will just take you to the shopping cart, and you can just purchase the book directly through the website. But really, we're talking about passion, and my passion really is performance science and looking at all the disciplines that go into performance as a whole. So whether that be the physical, whether it be the psychological, whether it be the nutritional, all right, whether it be the recovery status, whether it be biomechanics, whether it be just anatomical and anatomy. So my passion is really performance as a whole, and really how we can use performance science systematically to integrate our existing knowledge to try and promote a greater performance within athletes as a whole. And whether they be anywhere on that athlete spectrum, so talking about our pre-elite youth athletes that may be transitioning into academy programs like the Western Region Academy of Sport, for example, so a pre-elite youth program for 14 to 18-year-olds, moving from pre-elite youth programs into elite national youth programs, moving from elite youth programs into senior programs, and then obviously looking at the representative pathways as they go forward. But really for us, SPB International has been one of the passions that I've had for some time, and you can certainly jump on the website and have a look. my contact details are on there, so more than happy to take any questions through there. And the other passion that I have, I'm very fortunate, is that I can combine this obviously with my academic roles as well. So at the moment, with my associate professor role at the University of Southern Queensland, combining my two passions of performance science and the academic roles in sharing knowledge with students and seeing them progress throughout their journey. So I'm very fortunate. I have a very supportive and loving family who allow me to invest a significant amount of time. As we've already said, it's my passion, so I don't really find it a work, but it does take away from other areas of your life. And I have a very extremely supportive wife and children who allow me to invest my time into, obviously, when winning matters and trying to watch people grow and develop to become the best version of themselves.
I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be advised of new interviews when they're uploaded. I hope you join us again sometime. Catch you later.